What is up? You can't have a note on screen, Jonathan. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Music Mentality podcast, where everyone's already breaking all the rules. Um,
Can we talk now?
yes, you can talk now.
Oh,
I will be your host. My name is Jacob Clodfelter. Um, as a little introduction for all of us, I am currently a senior music composition major at a school in Texas that I won't necessarily name yet. I haven't decided if I'm going to name stuff. I'm a bass player, a vocalist, but primarily a composer. And the music that you just heard is a little something that's on my YouTube channel that I was writing for a friend's D&D campaign. Do we want to go around in the square
cool.
and everyone introduce themselves, starting with Brain?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Brian Wondra. I play guitar in the Swing and Axes at the Stephen F. Austin School of Music. And currently I play whatever people put in front of me, including Jacob down there.
That's cool. He never asked me to play anything for him.
And what is your major?
All right, so yeah, I am doing music education as a guitarist.
Gotcha. Okay, Jonathan?
Oh, I'm next in the square.
Yes, you are.
Okay, well, hey, I'm Jonathan. I used to do music. Now I just, sell drugs casually and DoorDash. But I'm going to get back into it and hang out with you guys. And I'm a math major. And I don't actually sell drugs. That's it.
And what do you play?
Oh, okay. I play the melodica, and I like to beatbox.
Okay, he's a saxophone.
But I also like to play the saxophone.
Be real with us.
And finally, Josué.
Hi, my name is Josué. I currently teach music at a couple of different little schools here around in Houston. I mostly play the drums, but I teach a little bit of guitar too, bass, a little bit of everything. And I'm currently not in school. I graduated with my associates in music, and I'm currently taking a little break.
Awesome.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah,
Thank-
get that
Great
well-deserved
to
break.
you.
Although it's not really a break because I know you're working super hard.
True.
So a little background on us. All four of us are actually from the same community college, and that's where we met. We were all in Theory 1 together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. And we've all just kind of gone different paths. And so today we thought the topic of conversation would be music school as a whole and our perspectives on the different aspects of music school, especially since we're all in different places. Brain and I kind of went the university route, but different majors. Josué and Jonathan went the non-university route, which is actually super common, and they're kind of doing their own things in that. So we kind of just wanted to talk about the different aspects of music school and stuff. But first, as we're going to start every podcast, we're not going to introduce ourselves every podcast, I don't think.
No.
But so we have two questions here. Brain, what have you been listening to this week?
Straight to the questions?
No, the intro questions. Come on, John.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
All right, this week I've actually been listening to a guy named, and his name escapes me currently.
Excellent.
Tal Farlow. Yeah, it's a strange name, but he's a jazz guitar player who plays chord melody, but it's really, in my opinion, sloppy. But people accept that kind of sound, right? Stylistically, you can kind of just make your way through some chord melodies and stuff. And I've actually been wondering, am I trying to play too clean? Should I play much more loose and kind of free like they do? And so, yeah, he threw me off. But then he plays all this bebop stuff, right? Which is super clean, super clear, sounds like a saxophone player doing loops. And so I'm like, okay, he clearly has technique. Why is he choosing to play this loose?
Because he's
Right?
high.
That's what has really thrown me for a loop. So Tal Farlow, he's been my jam.
Cool. And what have you been working on this week?
Your composition called Something Else.
For the record, I didn't ask that question like as a leading question. I didn't know that you were working on that this week.
Yeah, I did send out a little snippet of me playing to a click track. And one thing I know I'm going to have to do is play that very clean and very to the click. So I'm working like from the beginning with the click.
For sure, yeah.
Nice.
For the people listening, Brain and Josué actually are both working on a piece, but we're all across Texas in different places, so they're working on a piece of mine, but we all have to play to a click, and I'm gonna have to mix it and bring it all together, even though we're across the state, which is basically across the country because it's Texas. Jonathan.
I want to hear that.
Hopefully you will.
I know I could die.
What have
Okay,
you been
but
listening to this week, Jonathan?
Let me just look at my Spotify, because I mean that's the best way to check it out, because that's what I use. I pretty much, yeah, I'm lame. I go to like a playlist on Spotify, and it's just like Korean music that I listen to a lot, and it's usually like piano like based. So it's kind of like R&B sounding. I don't know their names because it's in Korean, but that's really what I like to listen to a lot, and anime music a lot.
Jonathan, you sent a link to the group chat today, and I went and I listened to that, and it was very guitar oriented. In fact, it was just guitar and vocals, a male vocal with tons of reverb.
Yeah, I don't know. I just liked it.
What was it?
Strange Creature. They're not even famous.
It's like Animals as Leaders done wrong.
That sounds awesome.
It is.
They're pretty good. I like them.
Good find.
What have you been working on this week, Jonathan?
Nothing. I'm not a music major, so I actually played my saxophone yesterday. It was really nice because like I don't really do it that much anymore, but it was cool. I guess I don't know, not playing too loudly.
Right on.
Control, and a little bit of piano. I mean, not much. Yeah.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the playing too loudly thing. I think the last time all four of us played together was the Christmas stuff that we played in the park, and that guy yelled at us because you were playing too loudly.
I know. I wasn't even mic'd.
Yeah, I know, dude. It was crazy. That's kind of a compliment, right? At least you can produce a loud sound.
Dude, that's a good story. We should have story time at one point.
Yeah.
About the Christmas in the park that we shouldn't have been there for.
True. But everybody wanted.
Josué, what have you been listening to this week?
I've been listening to this Polish guitarist. I don't know if you've heard of him, Brain. His name is like Jakub Jakub Zitecki or something like that.
Oh, yeah. That
know
dude's
what I'm
awesome.
about?
Yeah.
That one EP, the one that's got like letters in it. I forget what it's called.
Is it the one that's like white and blue, like album art or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
There's a track on there that's called Open, and what blew my mind, I've been listening to it on repeat because the chorus has more space than actual music. Like it just swells and then it stops, and it's like it's just time that's
like totally empty
like,
space with nothing.
Yeah, and then it's like it crescendos again and then it stops, and that's like the chorus part of the song, and it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, space and emptiness is what creates the music in this case. That's what I'm listening to.
That's a big thing, for sure. Just space in general in music. I know, like as a bass player, if I don't leave space, it really gets taxing on the ears. And we can talk about all that. We can talk about like actual compositional stuff and improv and jazz in another episode, but
Because we're great.
Okay. Yeah.
And I want everyone to know it.
You should hear us improv.
no, we will. We're gonna get to
What?
more advanced topics. Today's just music school. No theory pressure on you guys right now. So I'm being told by my supervisor that I'm too quiet compared to everyone else, so I'm gonna raise my volume.
Hi, Sarah.
So Josué, what have you been working on this week? I know you're working on like a million things all the time, but
I feel like the most like noteworthy thing that I've been working on this week is like perfecting this like coffee cake recipe that I found online.
No way.
this is the start to the podcast, man. We can't have
Hey,
two
man.
people
Yeah,
being
that's
like,
what I mean.
I didn't.
You don't
practice
know what
this
he's
week.
doing.
It
Make
came
that
out
coffee.
delicious, and then I made another one today, and it came out even better, dude. It's so fluffy, and it's like, it's just like music, man. So you got to practice to
Do you
get
sing to the cake?
it right.
I mean, you're not wrong. And I think that says something too, though. That I mean, Sarah's my wife. I've been really into baking lately, or Sarah's really been into baking lately, but we've been into like just experimenting with cooking, and it is similar to music, but it's also more importantly like a break from music, like working on something that's not what you're constantly working on and constantly like feeling in your spine that you should be working on 24/7, That's a nice purse there, Brain.
I wonder what's in here, huh?
Oh, is it food?
No. Have you ever seen a grown man with tools in a polka dotted bag?
Buddy guy.
No, actually. So speaking of this, I took up guitar repair, and I actually have a bunch of pickups and soldering irons and stuff laying around. And I went to the store and I got all the stuff to do my own fretwork now. So I'll never have to go back to get my frets worked on ever again, unless it's a serious, serious job, right? I got all the measurement tools, all the grits of sandpaper, everything. And also I caught wind today that our home guitar store in Texas, Guitar Stringer, right? We've all seen it. We've all been there. Guitar Stringer is in bad shape. I hear that they have a lot of stuff they can't sell. They're going to close down. The old man has probably 15 brand new PRSs that should be about $7,000 each, and he hasn't sold one in 15 years.
Wow.
And
They're
in bad shape. So if you know someone who wants a high-end PRS, if anyone who's watching wants a high-end PRS, go to Guitar Stringer, help them out, because they do the best work in town. The best fret work.
For the record, we are not sponsored by Guitar Stringer by any means. But
No,
go
I'm
support
sorry.
them.
I apologize.
But
They
No,
actually
you're good.
fixed the neck on this guitar. And part of it is still damaged. As you can see, there's a chip in my headstock.
I can't really see that from the camera, but
But we trust you.
yeah, we do trust you. But that's cool that you're doing your own repairs and stuff. I recently just attempted doing my own setup on my bass because it like got a little messed up, and it's super easy. Like, people make it so intimidating, and it's like adjusting the truss rod and everything is like super, super easy. I don't know why it's such an ordeal and people go pay good money for that. Okay.
I agree, especially if the guitar is moderately set up already, and you only have to do a little something to get it there.
Yeah.
But like a guitar off the factory line with a loose truss rod and no string tension, and no intonation, nothing whatsoever, no fretwork, if I just hand that to you, it's a nightmare. Yeah.
I could imagine so. Yeah, I'd imagine that'd be pretty rough.
Me too.
Okay.
That's why you buy good instruments.
True, except I don't know. I had a teacher one time who would bring in basses that were super cheap, but set up really nicely, and they played nicer than some of the like most expensive instruments I've played.
Ooh.
So, I don't know about that. Let's go to the main topic, shall we? Unless anyone's got anything else, any casual conversation. This is your casual conversation point, and that's it. That's all you get.
I'm good.
I'll interrupt if something comes to mind.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about music school. And the reason that I picked this topic as the first topic is because I feel like there's a lot of people out there who... Oh my gosh, Jonathan, your dog. I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are musicians. Maybe they're like weekend warriors or bedroom guitarists or whatever, you know, who have considered going to music school, or like they've been learning theory online or something and not quite getting it, and they're like, should I go to school for it? But they don't really have the advice or the perspective of what music school is really like. And so now that I'm a senior, Brain's a senior, and we've all been through a bunch of schooling at this point, I feel like we can adequately talk about and give a reference for those people, like, should you do this or should you not? Or at the very least, give them an idea of what they're getting themselves into. Especially because I know, like, music school for me, going through the process completely changed me as a person. The process of music school isn't like other college. You know, people go through college and it's about finding yourself and stuff. But in music school specifically, there's a whole lot of stuff that, I mean, you're worked to the bone. But not only that, you have all this pressure on you, and everyone sees your successes and failures, and you like wear your heart on your sleeve the entire time. And it'll change you. And it's certainly not easy. So with that in mind, let's start with the basics of what music school is like. So when you start at school, you're going to get into 2 classes immediately, because everyone starts all across the nation in the U.S. and I believe outside the U.S. as well, has a music theory course that goes for 3 to 4 semesters depending on the school that you're at, and an ear training or oral skills course that is also has 3 to 4 semesters depending on the school that you're at. So let's start with the music theory. I'm going to toss this off to one of you guys, because I'm actually a huge music theory nerd and I love music theory, but I want you guys' perspective and, you know, whatever you think.
I don't use it.
You don't use theory at all?
I use theory so much.
Okay, well, actually, first of all, for the people watching who don't know, music theory is essentially this idea of putting sounds into and onto paper, right? And it's the way that you take pitches and how do you build chords? How do you make a song, if you will? All that stuff, and you kind of study things in a way that Bach and Mozart and all of them did. And so it's just a general. It's kind of like the science and the math side of music. So you said you use music theory all the time. How do you use it, and how did you feel about? You were in Theory 1, right? With us.
Oh yeah, that was fun. It was so early in the morning. I hated it.
True.
But yeah. Oh, how do I use it? Pretty much just chords and stuff. Like, I know 1 goes to a 4. It can go to a 5. A whole bunch of other stuff. Or when I'm bored and I'm just like, what happens if I do this to this? Like, I would have never thought, you know, let me do C major to E major, because I wouldn't have known anything about theory, so I would have never tried it out. So it gave me a lot to start with, I guess. And then I just made shit up. Yeah.
C major to E major, a nice chromatic mediant modulation.
I don't know. I just did it.
Exactly.
I was like,
Right
you
there?
didn't learn that in Theory 1.
Yeah, I don't know what the
Brain, what do you have to say about the music theory courses as a whole?
Okay, here's what I have to say about what to expect at music school, music theory courses. Can you read this, or is it backwards?
Come on, guys. It's not rocket science.
Come on. It's not music theory.
That is the essence of what junior college music theory classes birth. All of a sudden, your Facebook feed will be loaded with music theory memes, all kinds of words that have missing letters that are note heads, and you have to know music theory. They'll have ACE, and they'll say, oh, it's A minor problem, right? All of a sudden, you're surrounded by people who say Bach instead of Bach. You're immediately, immersed in a group of people who collectively buy into the same direction. And for me personally, I'm someone who dabbled and knew a lot of music theory before getting there. So I didn't really experience the kind of discovery that all the kids who just graduated from high school and plopped into junior college got. I'm not going to rant, but yeah, the music theory memes are just going to be a regular part of life, and you're going to have to curate your Facebook accordingly, unless you love that.
So Brain, you're actually a little too loud. Sorry to be managing stuff. Can you just lower your input a little bit?
Barely.
And I see on my side you're peaking. That's hilarious that's what you picked out, and it's not like we didn't all catch that you called me out on the Bach thing. But it's interesting that you mentioned that you kind of already knew theory before going in. So I was in the same boat. I took half of Theory 1 in high school. And I remember, learning the general concepts and stuff. But, you learn parallel fifths and you learn writing in a Bach chorale style, right? But more importantly, I think I had the same background as you, Brain, kind of like in the more rock and pop world, reading chord sheets and stuff like that. And so I knew the theory from that perspective. But what I didn't have was reading music skills. And I just went directly into Theory 1 being like, I'll just relearn how to read music because I haven't read music in years and years and years. I remember that it's Every Good Boy Does Fine, right? I can get that. And then it was like bass clef. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. And it was like, that was a big trend. That's why I feel like it was so slow at the beginning, was people were relearning to read music, because a lot of people don't actually know how to read music very well. I mean, by the time you're, I would like to say by the time you're in your fourth year, you can read music pretty well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, parallel fifths. Look at that. Ew. They're even leaping, so it's like parallel and direct at the same time. So that's something that we should talk about a little bit. Is the Bach chorale idea is something that Theory 1 through 3, you're gonna spend 3 semesters learning how to write proper chord progressions within these constraints and rules that are defined by how Bach and Mozart and all of them wrote music. Nobody ever wrote these rules down. Well, I suppose they wrote them down later, but they weren't a precursor. They didn't write the rules and then compose. The rules were made after someone analyzed what was being composed by these composers, and then obviously those composers, we can get into it, but those composers were actually started with counterpoint harmony, which was different and had different rules. But essentially, what the whole idea of Theory 1 through 3, a lot of people get frustrated with, because it teaches you this classical harmony, but more importantly, what it's teaching you is functional harmony. And realizing that a 5 chord goes to a 1 chord every time, and a 7 chord, I actually wanted you to play that. Exactly. Play that again. Exactly. So you hear that in T, Do, right? But so functional harmony. Thanks for that, Sarah. Sarah's in the chat.
Ooh.
So with all that being said, we haven't actually talked to Josué. Josué, you have a lot to say about theory, I know. So what you got, my friend?
Well, I didn't know theory before going into Theory 1. because I just basically would try to write my own music, and I would just follow my intuition, follow my ear, without knowing what I was doing. So it was a struggle going through, especially Theory 1, just because I didn't get anything. I didn't know what was going on. This whole idea of Roman numerals, that was new to me. I didn't know. I was like, what is this for?
Can you explain the
Figured
Roman
eight.
numerals for people?
I'm sorry?
Can you explain the Roman numeral system for people?
Well, it's like if you do the, say like a scale. Actually, Brain, maybe you can show us.
Excellent. Got there eventually. Nice.
I wasn't going to play a diminished chord or a dominant seventh chord because that's another episode,
Sure.
right? So I played a major chord.
Right. So I mean, that's just basically the idea of building chords off like the scale, right? And I didn't know any of that. But you know, I feel like what I got most out of this whole the theory classes, was having the patience to sit down and try to really learn this stuff. Because I know I really struggled a lot, and I was like, okay, I don't like this stuff. I was doing fine before.
Amen.
You know, and you know, but now what it does is it really opens up what more you can do now that I know theory, and it's like now I'm not afraid to just tackle it and learn more theory on my own, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think that's an important perspective, that you had no idea what theory was and stuff, and I think most people don't. Most people don't even know the number system, right? And I think that might even be our next podcast, is talking in depth more about the number system. But in general, for those listening, the number system is just based on the 7 tones of a scale: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and then you're back to do. And then you reference those by their numbers. And so in theory, you'll learn how to build chords with these numbers and what they do and how they relate to each other and stuff. But what a lot of theory class will be is a lot of writing music in a score and notation, and a lot of reading music in score and notation. Not so much listening and stuff. That's actually not a huge part of it yet. But it's a lot of just writing and making sure you really understand these fundamentals. And they do build off into other genres. Say you're like a rock musician or a jazz musician. Rock and jazz come from these fundamental ideas, and they will help you in the end. But a lot of people will stop after theory 1 because they realize it's like not what they wanted when they went to school for music, because they want to play like Van Halen or whatever.
Amen.
And like, for example, Jonathan, you stopped at theory 1, right? But that's not because of music. That's because you had to do a math major instead or something.
It was too hard for me, and I couldn't take the stress.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah, it's really not.
I'm lying.
Oh, I thought we were having a real talk moment here.
No.
But
You all right? Go on, Jacob.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, you had it right the first time. I think while I was there, I think it was Daryl's last semester even, or no, it was a semester before his last semester. And I guess I was just not feeling it because I just looked at where it would go, and I think it's mostly education. Like you don't have to go to school to perform or something. So with that in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna go do math then or something. I don't know. But yeah.
I mean,
So
I think that's a real thing for sure, and it's not uncommon at all that you decided to do that. You do not need music school to be a good musician. Period. Like, I'm saying that as a senior music major, you do not need music school to be a good musician. But going through music school will make you a good musician in ways that you probably didn't think that you would go. But I think that's also a good point, is that you're going for a degree that's actually more useful, so you can do music on the side or whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And explore it more as a passion rather than I have to make a living off of this, so
Preach,
I'm going to
brother,
spend
preach.
18 hours of my day doing music, and that's it, you know?
Yeah.
So now that we've talked a little bit about theory, so the next class actually kind of works in conjunction with theory, because it's some last thing on the theory. Basically, half of the people in Music Theory 1 classes drop after Music Theory 1. So if you wanted to go to music school just as an experiment, don't feel bad if you drop after the first semester, because about half of them drop off because, I mean, they decide that it's not what they want to do. They decide they want to explore it as a passion, or they actually can't take the pressure of it, because there is a lot of pressures that happen in music school. So
I think
Jacob, before you move past that, can I quote one of our professors?
yeah,
That we
I
had,
just wouldn't
and
say
I
the
will
name.
leave him unnamed, of
Yeah,
course.
sure.
He said, it's apparent that a lot of people here are enamored with the idea of being a music major, but aren't committed to what it takes.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to throw this out there. Why do y'all think that so many people who find music regularly accessible, and we were good, right, Josué? And now we're in a classroom, all of a sudden, I'm not good at all. And some guy who plays flute is like making straight A's, and all of a sudden my identity is just tilted, right? And everything I thought I was good at, I'm actually not even in the top of my class at it, right? Whereas I was the best, and this might be something we touch on. I was the best back when, right? But here, it's a whole new ball game, you know? So, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Any thoughts?
I mean, for sure. I heard some echoing. Sorry. For sure, like, there's definitely a flip of the worlds. And I think part of that has to do with just what you're now learning, right? Because that flute player's been reading music since he was 11 years old, and he started playing the flute in 6th grade, right? You have not been reading music. Chances are you've been reading chord charts and learning how to play, you know, like a 3-chord song, and that's it. I mean, I'm not saying that specifically about you, because I actually know you were a good guitar player beforehand. But so sorry. So with that in mind, I mean, the flip happens, but that also puts a ton of different pressures on people, for sure. Like, you are no longer a big fish. You're definitely a tiny fish. And that quote about people being enamored with the idea of being music majors, I remember the first thing that was said to me when I went to the head of the department and said, hey, I want to study music. Basically, they were just like, yeah, you really, really gotta love music to do this. And I was like, what a vague statement. You know how many people love music? Like, everyone says they love music. And it's like,
You're right.
No, you have to love it to the point where you can, like, fall in love with the process, which is another quote of one of my professors. Fall in love with the process of going into a practice room for 4 hours and sitting in there if you have to. Now, 4 hours is an exaggeration. 4 hours is like the max I've ever spent in a practice room. I don't spend that much time, truth be told. We'll talk about that.
That was a regular.
What?
I said that was a regular.
For you?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not 4, maybe like 3 or 2.5.
See, and I was told, I was going to talk more about this on private lessons, but I was told starting in, they were like, you should be practicing your primary instrument 6 hours every day. All right, let's move on, because otherwise we will not get through all of this.
Okay.
Okay, so ear training courses. Ear training courses move alongside the same side as as the theory courses, and generally you come in and you take ear training courses with like the same people you're taking theory courses with. Even at the university level, I see that. It's
Same teacher.
It's well, university it's not the same teacher. For us, it happened to be the same professor. But I see at university it's often not the same professor. But you learn ear training, and ear training, what essentially ear training does is it, oddly enough, it actually, first of all, trains your ear to hear the difference in intervals, right? Just what's the space between those notes? That's what an interval is, right? Come on, guys, give me the number. No one.
Perfect.
Yeah. So the idea is you have to train your ear for the space between intervals, and then also eventually you get to chords and stuff. But something that actually ties in really deeply into theory that they don't tell you necessarily you're learning is that they're kind of, this is going to sound bad in a negative context, but they're kind of indoctrinating your ear to hear functional harmony the way that they intend it to hear, right? Now, this is just my personal belief. I'm not a huge believer that a person naturally hears, right? A person naturally hears that 5 going to that 1. Now, some people in the chat, let me know if you heard that. Actually, specifically people who don't have music training. Let me know if you heard where that was supposed to resolve. But they kind of indoctrinate your ear to hear the chords within a diatonic scale.
True.
So ear training also included sight singing for us, where basically it trains your ear and your voice at the same time. You don't have to be a good singer, but it trains your ear and your voice at the same time to make sure your brain and your voice are in sync with one another, so you can look at a piece of music and hear the piece of music before you even play a note. And I would say I've gotten to the point where I can hear pretty closely what it's going to sound like without, obviously without having the key. So what would you guys say, especially, Jonathan only taking ear training 1, Brain, you're a music ed major even. What's your perspective on that? And Josué was always, he has an interesting thing about feeling chords.
Ooh, Jonathan.
Oh, no, Josué hasn't said nothing.
No. Okay, yeah, let Josué speak.
Oh, I'm going?
You're going. Talk about ear training for us.
What can I say, man? Theory was like the difficult one. Ear training was like the easy one, and the one that it was just like a joy to take. For me, like, ear training was probably the best thing I ever got out of music school, because I use it every single day. Whenever I'm teaching, a kid wants to learn a song, I've never heard it before, and they're like, hey, I want to learn this guitar solo, or what's this drum part that this is doing. I have to be able to like just listen to it right then and then write down things. So I'm using a lot of melodic, like, dictation, rhythmic dictation. This is pretty much every single day, and without those courses, I never would have been able to do that. And
Yeah.
what was the thing?
Ear training for teaching students.
Right. Yeah. But you were talking earlier about the feeling chords thing. Yeah, that's the approach that I had always taken before, with like, major chords, major sevenths always sounded kind of romantic to me. The diminished, always evil. And I just kind of learned stuff like that at first, and then until I started really hearing intervals better, and dissecting things that way.
Yeah, I remember in class whenever we had those chord progressions, like, I would like bomb the shit out of that shit. I would bomb that stuff very badly, and then seeing Josué, and I was like, man, why is he good at it? He got that right every time. So
But I feel like, well, you were a sax player. I feel like me and Brain, chordal instruments, because we both did guitar.
yeah,
We were always a little more inclined to that kind of stuff. And singing too, man, because if you're trying to like learn something, it's so useful to be able to sing a pitch that you're trying to hear off like a record or something that you want to learn, and then you're like, what's that note? And you sing it, and then there it is. I just think that's an invaluable skill, man.
Yeah, let me do that.
Thing.
Yeah.
Brain, any thoughts?
Yes, I do. All right. So, Josué, you're right. For functional, they do teach you functional harmony, and you can apply that to like functional music. I know, go figure, right? You use something from music school. But I was just thinking about how I play at a church down the road, and they're a gospel church, and 90% of it is by ear. And they explicitly said, because we want there to be spontaneity, you have to be able to just go. If we lift the key all of a sudden, you have to register that and move. And, sometimes that's a big ask, right? And then just today, it's Sunday currently, just this morning I was playing at a church reading off of a computer, right? And my computer glitches. And what was supposed to be one touch to turn the page, now it like went back to my home screen, and I had no music for like 2.5 to 3 minutes of a song. And I had to rely on my oral skills, and I was right by the bassist, so I just really hung in there, and I knew what key we were in, and literally using the skills we learned, 1 4 5 1, in multiple keys. Yeah, I had to call upon that. And Josué's right. Yeah, playing a chordal instrument is a big plus for that kind of thing.
Cheaters.
Yeah, crucified. But that's kind of my thought on that. And I've always just been good with ear training, but I listen to a lot of music, so maybe that's why.
So my small perspective on it is actually, so in general, I was good at music theory, and I'd like to think that I still am, but kind of struggled with ear training more than other people. And I don't know if that's because I'm a bass player and like hearing things as a bass player, trying to play things by ear is just difficult when you start out way in the beginning, just because bass is never mixed into anything very well and stuff. And so a lot of the times what that produced was learning music by chord charts, which is why I understood chords pretty well, because I learned basically solely from chord charts, and I would just play the chord charts, and I knew the notes of my fretboard, which is not intending to sound demeaning, but there are bass players who play entirely by ear and don't know the notes on the fretboard. But knowing that stuff helped me out a ton. But something I can say for sure is that ear training is not something you can BS. It's not something that you can cram the night before and just hope to do well on the test or the quiz or whatever the next day. Ear training is something that actually just needs practice and takes years and years to get a really, really good ear. And to get it refined, even in the beginning, just hearing basic intervals and stuff, you kind of have to practice that stuff. Like a common interval that people would mix up, I remember, is the minor sixth versus the tritone. They kind of sound pretty similar. They're both really dark, right? Right? Versus so they kind of sound pretty similar completely out of context. Obviously out of there, when you had the context of C as tonic, there was context, and so you could hear the difference. But they're both dark and stuff. And so ear training as a whole is not something that you can just get away with, like just go to class. It's actually something you have to practice. So every day when you're in music school, you have to I remember you're doing your theory homework, and then you're also kind of practicing your ear training, right? and that adds to your practice time that isn't your private lesson, which should bring us to the next section of private lessons.
Segway.
Got him. So general rundown, I'm gonna let you guys talk a lot about this, but general rundown is that when you go to music school, you have one primary instrument, and you can take additional lessons if you want to, but they are electives. You have one primary instrument that you have to take. Generally, it's an hour every week of private lessons, and what that will entail is learning repertoire, practicing scales, reading music. Generally, at every school, there's some kind of lab / studio / convocation, whatever you want to call it, where you are to perform on a stage by yourself in front of all of the other music students and faculty for them to judge you and judge how good you are and tell you what you messed up and what you could do better and stuff.
No pressure.
And
Yep.
so with that being said, take it away, someone.
I loved the adrenaline. That's all I had to say.
Oh, okay.
Whenever you had to go to lab and it was like you're just the only one up there, like it's like you can either it'll ruin you or it'll help you a lot. And I don't know where I was, but I liked it. So it was fun. Yeah. Anybody?
Josué.
Brian.
All right. No problem. No problem. All right. So everyone in this chat knows that I have gone on stage and had crash and burns at lab, right?
For sure.
And it always has just gotten under my head. I mean, under my skin and into my head. Because there's something I find when I play for people who just are sitting in a restaurant. You know, I get comments like, oh, that really touched me, or that was a beautiful song. But when I play for people who know what they're looking at, I get all kinds of pretentious comments. And also at lab, people who are watching might not know this, students are kind of required to give critique to you in front of the whole assembly. And when you go up there, you know you're going to hear bad information at the end of this performance. And it just psychs me out, right?
So, hang on, I want to cut you off there. That's actually not the norm at every school. That was just at the school we were at.
Of course. But I play in studio, which is essentially lab, every Friday. And people might not know that you have a studio class usually where every person in your instrument group will meet once a week, and maybe 5 people will play 5 pieces. In there, you are required to chime in and give feedback and positive criticism, right? And then what is typically called convocation or lab, and I'll quit doing this, I promise, guys. But convocation is kind of just play for the student assembly and showcase your whole studio. You're the guitar player for today. And the next ensemble might be a string quartet. Every studio will put someone forward. So you're like representing your country in the Olympics. It's kind of a big deal, you know? And it always freaked me out, and I never wanted to do it. And yeah, that was a trying time for me. But now I do love to do it, and I want to do it, and my nerves are gone because I'm eager. And funny enough, I think the trick with stage fright is honestly just convincing yourself to be eager, because you're not eventually going to get to that point after multiple crashes and burns. You know, you have to put the cart before the horse. Say, I'm just going to be eager and go out and have fun. And then you walk into it, and it is what you make it, you know? And that's how I beat stage fright. Quick sojourn, you know, I put the cart before the horse.
Josué.
Man, I was just a weird case, though, because I didn't really have a major instrument.
True.
Yeah, you kind of...
You play everything.
I sucked equally at everything.
Yeah, which I think can only happen at the community
said,
college
yeah.
level. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not that he sucked equally at everything. Obviously, that's a joke. But
I know.
for those listening, Josué plays like a million different instruments and took private lessons on like every different instrument. And he didn't transfer. So the big thing is, if you transferred, you have to pass. Not only do you have to audition, but you have to pass a barrier on your primary instrument where they say you're good enough, and you have to like declare that instrument and stuff.
Well, I guess officially at the end, what was my major instrument was voice, right? Because I did like, was it like 2 or 3 semesters straight of voice, which honestly it was going pretty well. But really, it wasn't my passion. I said, I don't really see myself singing. I don't really enjoy doing this. I'm literally just doing it just to go to a 4-year school. And once I'm there at that 4-year school, I'm not going to escape it. I can't say, hey, let's do, drum set or something. It's like, no, buddy, you got to stick to voice. And I was like, I can't do that. So that's why I stopped. But the whole thing with private lesson, the reason I took so much is because it was so mind-blowing, the amount of knowledge that these professors had at like 15 minutes away from my house. And I was like, I want to just be a sponge and soak up all of these people's information. And I've learned so much through all the different wonderful instructors that I took from. And man, honestly, I'm just super grateful for that. I'm just going to find a way to, succeed with what I've already taken.
Nice.
And go ahead, Jonathan.
Are we talking about private lessons?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jacob. I thought we were talking about lab.
Oh well, it's all built into the same thing, right? Because lab is a consequent of private lessons. You have to play in convocation studio or lab if you are taking a private lesson. So interestingly, Josué, I would say you have succeeded using those skills, right? If you are surviving off of making music, teaching music, whatever, I would say you've definitely succeeded. And it is invaluable information. And I can say, I mean, pretty confidently, I went from not being able to sing like a single note and match pitch to being a voice major senior, right? Because of private lessons. It wasn't even my major instrument. My major instrument for the first 2 years was bass, and I was just taking voice for fun. And there's just that constant weekly pressure and practice and everything will teach you so much. But Josué, you did mention that you didn't want to do voice, and I gotta bring it up so people know there are kind of 2 schools of music. So there's like the pop world, which is schools like Berklee College of Music, where they do like jazz and rock heavily, right? And they focus a lot on that. But your standard community college or university puts classical first. Classical music is first. And even big name like serious schools that are jazz schools, for example, I'll name off University of North Texas. It's like a really, really, really good jazz school. But even they require you to do classical stuff before you can really move into jazz stuff. So with that in mind, so talking about the voice thing, I think Josué and I are in a similar boat. We both just kind of wanted to learn to sing. But what are you singing? Well, you're singing Italian arias and art songs in German and French and stuff like that. You don't get to...
See, I thought the arias and the opera stuff was cool. It's the art songs that I could never get behind.
Really?
I thought that stuff was cool, man. Opera's freaking cool. You gotta admit.
No, I actually hate opera. I hate opera so much, dude.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's sad. Sad to hear.
I can't sit through an opera. I like musical theater, which is basically America's opera. So, whatever. Any other thoughts on private lessons?
Yes. For
Go for it.
anyone who's going to a 4-year school, whether you're transferring or going in as a freshman, go visit them. Figure out who you're going to study with before you commit to this school financially or on paper, because sometimes people's personalities do not mix, and you need to meet with who you're going to be studying under.
True.
Can we use the name of a professor if they have a alias other than their last name?
Sure, I guess.
You can do whatever you want. The legal ramifications.
I don't know. I just don't want to say
Oh,
names,
okay.
but
Yeah. Okay. Well, how did y'all feel? Like, was it a private lesson? I mean, it was kind of when we went to go play with Doc Locke.
oh
Like at his
yeah,
house.
yes.
Good
So
question.
some background for people listening. Three of us, I think it was all of us but Josué, went and studied separately jazz combo stuff with one of our professors who was the ensemble director for jazz band, and that was like at his house,
Yeah.
which was very different and kind of weird because he was managing like 6 of us at the same time.
Yeah. But it was something at least.
I mean, I felt like I learned a lot from that just because there was like getting over the fear of, like for me, consistent walking bass lines, and then you have to take a solo occasionally, and everyone sucks at their solo because none of us have been playing jazz that long, and we don't know we suck, but
Oh, I
We
know.
knew. Well, I knew I sucked.
Josué was
too
the
many
worst.
roots.
I was joking. Josué wasn't there.
Yeah, that was a fun time, and I think he actually did us a favor in a way by picking us up. And if you're watching out there, Doc, good job with
Thank you.
your group, the Swangers. Great job with everything.
Hell yeah.
Oh, you know what? We'll go ahead and
missed-
advertise that for people listening. Doc Locke and the Swangers. Go check it out. That's DOC space LOC and the Swangers.
It's Loke, Doc Loke.
It really is Doc Locke. Yeah, but Jonathan pronounced it Doc Locke, which is
Oh, it's really? Oh,
wrong.
Can you be a radio host, Jacob? Because I would listen to you.
This is where this is going to lead to eventually.
Oh yeah.
I hope so. All right, guys. Oh, wait, one last thing on private lessons, actually. So something I wanted to mention about private lessons is, and actually ask you guys, practice schedule and practice regime. So, like, everyone has to practice. There's practice rooms all throughout every music building. Some people sit in practice rooms and don't actually practice, but they take them up because they want the privacy or something, and they sit there on their phone. Some people practice at home, whatever. So I know for voice generally you can't really practice more than a couple hours a day because you wear out your voice. I know like piano majors can practice as long as they want all day long, and they're expected to because piano is an extremely competitive instrument the same way that violin is.
Oh wow.
So, how often would you say that you guys actually practiced, like focused practiced daily or weekly for your private lesson? And what would you say should be, because a lot of people will, like professors will say what's expected of you, but I'm pretty confident nobody does what the professors say is actually expected of them to practice. It's kind of like this just fear they put in you, and they're like, you have to practice every minute of every hour of every day.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this isn't Whiplash, and music school is not Whiplash. So
I mean, I think there's no set time. I think it depends on each person, probably, right? Or it's always, I don't know.
how long did you practice for your lessons your first semester?
Shit. A lot, but at the same time, when I look back, I wasn't really practicing anything useful. But you didn't know it wasn't useful because you're practicing.
Like what?
Well, I had a saxophone lesson teacher, and he was big on reading, I guess. And it's kind of weird because I wanted to do jazz. And I don't know, like you can maybe say, you know, teachers, maybe they have like a process and, you know, they're used to it after being private lesson teachers for so long. And they're just like, yeah, let me just throw this at him because, you know, I'll get my paycheck anyways. I don't know. That's not how I felt, but I had to read like the Charlie Parker solos too and stuff. And it's kind of like when you read that stuff, you don't digest anything. It's Charlie Parker, you know, you have to listen and play what he plays, the way he plays it. Reading it, you don't achieve anything. And I literally did that for like 2 semesters. It felt like, I mean, I was learning about chords and stuff, but I really feel like I didn't learn much. But I mean, I know now, right? So.
Well, for sure. And I think that comes back to what we were saying about how it's mostly a classical system. And jazz will come later, basically. Even Brain, who's like a jazz guitarist, had to play classical guitar and still does, right? And I think a lot of people have that perspective their first semester where you're like, so for example, I was handed the Bach cello suite movement number 1 in G, right? To play. Super standard rep for cellists and bass players. And that wasn't helping my pop playing at all, I don't think, other than like general technique. But I think that's a big thing. It's just general technique and getting you, you know, it's kind of just putting you in motion, right? Putting you into the space of, you got to read music, you got to practice, you got to do this and that, right? And even though you only wanted to be a jazz musician, they want to make you a well-rounded musician all around. And I mean, this is just my perspective, but I've been told that the best jazz players are the ones who can just sight read anything, right? Someone can just hand them a chart on a gig and they're good to go, right? Brain?
I don't know any.
Yeah, you know what? I think they might say like whatever you really want to do. They know you're going to work on that in your free time anyway, right? So they're going to hound you to learn all the other things you might ignore because they know that while you're pursuing that thing, those other things are going to pay your bills, right? While you're willing to play for free in this jazz combo or whatever, you know, that classical gig at the church at 9 a.m. is going to put your food on the table. And
that's definitely true, yeah.
Something you asked him is, how much did you practice per week, right, for your lesson? Probably 0.
What?
Maybe 1 hour the hour before. But, and here's why. This is something people experience in music school, and I don't think I'm unique to this, right? You have like, okay, your church gigs. I have this written down. Jazz band, late night gigs. You have composers who want you to play their pieces. You have so many instances where you have to perform well, and you don't want to look like an idiot. Take sight singing, take piano. I mean, there are just a multitude of places where you're expected to perform and people are depending on you and you don't want to look like a fool. And I tell you what, the last thing I'm going to look at is my, you know, lesson music for Thursday when tomorrow I have a performance. And then the next day I have a church gig. And you know what I mean? So my time ended up getting spread into the performance aspect, and I rarely practiced for my lessons. And yeah, I'm not proud of that, and I should do better and will do better.
I think that's actually, now that you mention it, it's kind of a trap that I think people can get into, and I've been in that too. And you're right. There is no doubt tons and tons and tons of stuff that you have to be practicing and doing in music school. We haven't even like scratched the surface here. You mentioned piano. If you go to music school, you have to learn how to play piano even if it's not your primary instrument. Boom, done. Talked about it. It's a side thing you have to be practicing. But it can really feel like you just practice the day before for whatever the next thing is, because you always have something the next day, right? Whether it's like an ear training test or you actually have a gig. Like right now I'm doing like this church stuff, and I find that I actually just learn the music on Saturday night, because the rest of the week I was composing, because if I have a lesson on Monday, I have to have something done by Monday, and composing you can't whip out in 30 minutes, right? And so there is that thing. And then like if you have an ensemble test, which we're going to talk about ensembles in a second, an ensemble test where you have to, you know, maybe all the saxes have to demonstrate that they know how to play the soli in bars 23 through 57 or whatever, right? And so there's always something the next day, and I feel like you can get into the trap. I'm trying to break that right now, trying really, really hard to practice everything every day, but I'm not sure it's super efficient. Josué, you are like a practicing king.
I mean, I'm always holding an instrument in my hands pretty much, but I mean, I was kind of like in what Brain said. I'm pretty sure I just practiced like the day before or the day of, and I would just, sometimes I would wing it. I'm not proud of that. I was also in like, I think there was like multiple semesters where I was doing like at least 2 private lessons and then like 3 or 4 ensembles at the same time. And then I think there was like a couple of semesters that I was still an audio major, so I was doing audio classes, and it's like I really didn't find time to do everything. I mean, it's just the only person I could blame was myself for trying to bite more than I could chew. But I don't know. I'd have to say maybe like intense focus practice on like what I was supposed to do. Maybe like what, 3-4 hours a week, which isn't very much at all.
Yeah.
Do you do that in a practice room, or do you work best at home? And this is a question for everyone around the circle.
I just work best at home, to be honest, because I was like, I don't want nobody to hear me screeching.
Yeah. Amen.
Like a dying raccoon at school.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, here, like in this place, you know, it's sort of like my little home studio. It's like I have everything here that I need. I have like a little refrigerator outside. I can just get a water. I can get whatever I want. So it's like, you know, it's like I would spend my hours here. But, you know, again, I would practice sometimes the stuff that I wanted to practice, not necessarily what, you know. And I would always, the problem that I always had was going down tangents, because I didn't organize my stuff like sort of like the way I do now, where it's like now I organize practice into like, okay, I'm going to do just this thing this today, and then tomorrow it's going to be this. Before, it's just like I would be working on like a piece or something, and it's like, oh, I need to like refine my technique for this. And I would go down that rabbit hole for hours, you know?
For sure. That's definitely, we got dog cams today. No, that's definitely a thing. It's kind of like how people joke how like, your house will be dirty forever until there's something else to do, right? And then once you've got something else to do, you'll actually clean your house. And that's kind of how it feels like sometimes. You want to practice everything but the thing that you're supposed to be practicing. Don't know why. So I would say my practice schedule, so things have changed a lot since I became a full-time voice major and composer. But I know when I first started the first 2 semesters, I actually had to I was so determined to be a good bass player. I had to like sit in a practice room, and I couldn't do it at home. I wouldn't practice efficiently at home, but I would actually bring my electric bass to school every day, sometimes with not an amp, but like a little pocket amp and headphones, and sit in a practice room. It's not even useful for an electric bass player to sit in a practice room, but what it did was it made me focus on the things that, you know, were not anything else. I remember actually, like I was talking about earlier, sitting in a practice room for 4 hours straight. I remember actually the first semester sitting in a practice room for 4 hours practicing the Bach Cello Suite No. 1. And I couldn't read it. Remember, I'm like memorizing 4 bars, playing it, memorizing 4 bars, memorizing the next 4 bars over and over and over again. And then semester 2, I did similar stuff. I think I did a solo arrangement of Autumn Leaves or something. Like a chordal type chord melody thing of Autumn Leaves, and I did the same stuff in the practice room. But voice, I was kind of double majoring at the time, and so I had to do the same thing, except I was super determined and had this whole whiplash mentality, which is not actually what music school is like. That I really just had to push myself and destroy my body to get better. And I remember waking up the first 2 semesters to train my ear and train my matching pitch, basically. Waking up at like 5, getting to school. The building was open at like 5:30 or something. And just doing like on my voice. Right? Like over and over and over at like 5:30 in the morning, way before class started. And that was like a big part of my lessons. And so the first year I put in tons and tons of hours, I would say, for my private lessons. And then it's just slowly dropped off like a bunch. And now my main private lesson is composition, which takes 6 or 7 hours of my time every week. And truth be told, my voice lessons struggle majorly because of it. And I probably only practice like 2 hours max a week for my voice lessons.
Were you working too?
I was working when I was at the first year. Yeah, I was working. I'm not working currently. I think university workload feels like more than community college workload was, and I don't think I could be working right now. My grades would slip a ton.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Any other private lesson thoughts?
Oh, yes,
like
yes. I'm
practicing.
actually toying with something that maybe, like voice, guitar players should only practice a shortened and condensed and focused amount of time. I'm finding that especially playing jazz or anything really technically demanding, you really can't just hammer it for long. And yeah, I'm actually working to condense my practice time and really focus it.
Yeah, it's. I remember my father-in-law actually said one time, and I would think this is true for me and my wife as well, that he was saying how he can do in like 15 minutes what it takes other people like 2 hours, because other people are not concentrated practicers. And concentrated practice can be super, super efficient. Don't just play your little lick. Really focus on how your fingers are and your technique and stuff, and play through it slowly and very efficiently and stuff. And that's a big thing. It's actually not so much time input, especially as like a voice major who can't practice more than, I don't know, I wouldn't say you can't practice more than 2 hours a day as a voice major. Your voice would be so fatigued. But yeah, concentrated practice is definitely more important, and kind of the only way you can get through than actually just practicing 8 hours a day or whatever.
Yeah.
Ensembles?
What about them?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just do a small little lead into this. When you're in music school, you have to talk about, or you have to go to an ensemble. Everyone is required to be in one major ensemble. You can be in additional ensembles if you want to. So an example of ensembles would be like choir, jazz band, wind orchestra, chamber orchestra is like a common thing, but like big fat orchestra. Jazz combos can sometimes count as an ensemble, but they're like considered small ensembles.
Steel band,
brass choir. There's all kinds of stuff. But generally, everyone needs what's considered one big ensemble. So there can be like a large choir, and then like jazz band would be like a big band. Jazz band is a large ensemble, and then full orchestra or stuff like that. So, what are y'all's perspectives and experiences on ensembles, and what do you think of the process of them?
Depends on the teacher. That's the biggest thing. That's always what it is. The teacher leads the ensemble. So, yeah. Anybody? Like, for instance, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. For instance, the difference between one jazz professor and the other jazz ensemble leader. If y'all know who I'm talking about,
Yeah, we
one of
know.
them.
Just continue. Just
Okay, okay, cool. Yeah, like in one, like he really emphasized each of us taking a solo, and like he really it felt relaxed. He just wanted us to develop at our own pace. And the other one, he really tried to strategize things, and he pushed it, and it was a different way. And like I know a lot of people talk about it like it's great, and now the jazz ensemble sounds a lot better. So I mean, of course there's a lot of positive things too, but I think it's just also like if you're a student, you like to be taught this way, and you know I don't know. Yeah, it just depends on what kind of teacher you like too. So that's my opinion on ensembles.
brain,
Yeah.
Josue.
It's so quiet.
Josue, what you got?
I don't know, man.
All right, I got a little something for you. Okay, I actually have been thinking about this, right? Currently at my school, we're having a little bit of an issue with filling in some of the ensembles, right? And I really think there's a huge shortage of communication between the private lesson teachers and the ensemble directors. And oftentimes, if there's someone who's not pulling their weight in the ensemble, it would be great if they could say to the private lesson teacher, hey, this is really not coming along. Can you do something with this, right? And I find in all my private lessons, especially because of the dichotomy between jazz and classical, I really can't get help at some points, right? Or we're so busy working on my lab performance and my recital performance pieces that we just simply don't have the vocational time to devote to the curricular time, to devote to these pieces, right? And I've had to find out everything about jazz on my own by listening because I got no help really on it. And I think it'd be really cool if, especially the studio head, maybe of the guitar department, can take his two best jazz guys and kind of allocate them into the jazz bands and allocate people by their strengths, right? And I'm talking a lot more about private lesson teachers, but I really think there should be much more communication. And I know we have all had times in ensembles where we wanted to bring something to our teacher, but maybe had to force it into the lesson because we needed it looked at that badly, right? Or just had to suffer and look it up on our own. But that's my thought.
Yeah.
Fair question.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go on. I thought Brian asked the question. So.
So you just weren't listening. All right, awesome. So that's an interesting point, and one of the things I think there's kind of a theme here that you can pick up on all the way through. We keep talking about having time to practice things. It's because there's actually so many different things that you practice. Nothing actually gets a whole lot of work done. Especially ensembles tend to be the first thing that goes. I hate to say that, but people tend to not practice their ensemble music outside of an ensemble because they can hide in the ensemble or whatever and just be like, oh, I'll just sight read it or whatever. And it actually creates worse ensembles. But there's just always so much to practice, and it's an interesting point, the ensemble versus the private lessons, especially as you're saying, with jazz, when you're studying, you're studying classical music in theory and ear training 1 through 4, but you're in the jazz band and no one's teaching you jazz. Your private lesson teacher's not teaching you jazz. No one's that jazz band director has to teach everyone how do you swing, right? And how do you make something sound spicy and hip, even though what's written is totally not spicy and hip and is really square. And so there's that, but then also like, so a vocal thing actually, technique. I've found technique things being taught in choir that seem contradictory to my private lesson, and that's because there's a lot of basic things of technique that are the same, right? You know, you want forward resonance and you want an open backspace and stuff like this. But for example, in solo singing, you're using tons of energy all the time and you're vibrating and this and that. And in choir, you're not. There's a general idea for a lot of choirs. Some choirs like vibrato, but a lot of them will say no vibrato ever. And then it's like, well, what happens is these choir kids or choir students will completely shift their technique from what they're learning in their private lesson because they're hiding behind other people, and then they're like, well, I'm not singing full and this and that, and there's all kinds of stuff, and there's like a shift of technique, and it's a big problem, I think, especially as someone who didn't start out singing in choirs. I didn't sing in a choir till college, but there is that contrast of your private lesson versus the ensemble. I've got some other stuff to say, but Josué, do you have anything to add on this ensembles? You've been in many different ensembles.
Yeah. Some, I don't know who said this earlier, but I behind other people, and then others I could not. Where it's like sometimes, even though I was taking, I think, like 4 ensembles at the same time or something.
Yeah.
It's like maybe half of them would get more attention just because of, like, I think like what Jonathan said earlier, like depending on the teachers, like some of the professors, they're just, hey, nobody else is playing your part, and you got to be able to make that part work and do it well. And it's like, yeah, okay. So it's like, I would spend more attention on that. And then for another ensemble, I was more of like a, like if I was doubling other parts or stuff, it's like I wouldn't put so much time into that. But I don't know.
I wanted to chime in.
Was for the first time, it's like, you're getting to play with other people. It's like your classmates, and
True.
It's cool because it's like I was always used to just playing by myself, pretty much, and this is suddenly it's a mass thing, and we all have to communicate this music effectively, and stay together, and you learn so many things. Like I remember I was like, oh my gosh, my tempo sucks. The first time I joined like a steel band or the first time I played drums for a jazz ensemble, I was like so nervous, and it's like I was like, whoa, I'm thrown into this situation that I wouldn't have found myself in otherwise, these really large things. I always thought that was pretty cool.
For sure.
Yeah. Playing with people's
Brain, you had something.
Yeah. All right. So on the topic of playing behind people, right? I thought of this the other day, and it's genius, guys. Just go with me. Don't question it whatsoever. So I think the curse of being a good musician might be that you're always getting told you're too loud. And hear me out.
From the guitarist. Of course.
Hear me out. I'm a guitar player who plays into the texture, right? But I can also sight read, and we've all been in ensembles where we're sight reading something, we're doing well, and we're actually playing out. Everyone's playing under you, and the director thinks you're playing too loud. So he has you turned down, right? We've all been there.
No,
in church gigs, in ensembles,
sure.
In general, yeah, because you're a good sight reader and you know how to play forte when it says forte, and everyone's playing way under, I just had that epiphany that because I was told that during the rehearsal. And it's not that I'm loud. It's that I play in the spaces, right? We were talking about space. When there's a space, I play very presently in it, right? And then I get out. so I'm not really that loud, but I'm the only one playing confidently, and I'm playing right where the entrance should be. Anyway, spiel over.
No, I think like whenever I had been in jazz band, and let's say it depends on your chair as well. Like if you're first chair, then second, third, or they will be looking towards you for your part because they're gonna follow you because you're supposed to be the leader of your section or something like that. Well, I think I remember a lot that I wanted to like learn a lot. I didn't really want to be the first saxophone a lot of the time because it's kind of cool when you hear other people's take on what it should sound like. So yeah, that's a big part about it too. Like just your seating. Like I don't even know how it should sound, but everybody's gonna listen to me. Okay, just because I can sight read it. Okay, no, I don't really know that much.
True.
To me, that was the one most difficult part of ensembles, especially since I feel like we were all perfectionists in a sense, and a whole ensemble sounds so different from when you're sitting versus what the director is hearing. And I always wanted to be in that spot where it's like, I want to be where you are and listen to, like, I hope one day I can finally clone myself so I can listen to like how it sounds over there as I'm playing, and then I can also hear, in the live room where it's like, you know exactly what you're doing wrong. And sometimes I was unclear, it's like, how should I be doing this, or how can I, fix things, make things better, or maybe the way I'm playing is affecting the way trombone over there is playing, or whatever, or maybe I need to pronounce my hi-hat a little bit better, or maybe this harmony part needs to come out a little more, or maybe it's too loud, and it's like, for me, I was never really sure of like, okay, I'm playing soft, but I'm not 100% sure, we're all sounding balanced and, clear together.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, this man played drums and saxophone in a jazz band.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why he's talking about the harmony parts and bringing out the hi-hat. He's not retarded. He's, multi-instrumental.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so I've got a couple points to mention. Brain, you mentioned the playing confidently, and you're like playing louder than the other people, and so it's like you got to turn down. And so I'm not an educator, and I don't know what you do in that situation as an educator. But interestingly, from the choral perspective, and I'm so glad, by the way, that we have all four of us here, because we do have these different perspectives, because I haven't played in jazz band in a year and a half or something, But from the choral perspective, actually, it's you sing louder, and you know what happens is actually the rest of the choir starts to sing louder. It's almost like how a drummer has dynamic control of like a rock band or a jazz band. In choir, if you're confident, your whole section's going to be more confident. And then other people are going to be more confident too, as long as they can hear the tuning and stuff. So like something I remember, a guest conductor who came in for one of our choirs, he said, be a leader, right? We were all timidly sight reading or whatever, and we're like, new conductor, we don't want to mess up. But he was like, come on, be a leader. And just that instantly like made all of us like be more confident a little bit, and the ensemble just rang so much better. And just so it's interesting how like in a jazz band that's different than in a choral setting, because I think confidence in a choral setting like kind of infects the choir, whereas in a jazz band, if the drummer's playing too loud, he's just playing too loud, right? And he needs to adjust for the ensemble, and adjust what the conductor's doing, if the conductor's even conducting, because it's jazz band, and normally they're just like a one, a two, and they just, that's it, you go.
I know. We have all had those directors, who come out, they count you off, and then they walk off side stage out of view of the audience, and they come back in to point at people, and they give you the open sign if it's an open solo. When it's time to wrap it up, they close it, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they walk back off.
Yeah.
And they come out just to cue solos and to end it.
Yeah.
It's a good game. And they always end like this. They go.
To make it seem like they're doing something. Yeah.
Even though it's their band and they've actually done a lot.
Oh yeah, they've done a ton. We're not saying jazz band directors don't do anything. They've done a ton. They make the band sound good. And
their job's done.
That's kind of yeah. But that's kind of the whole point, kind of like what you were saying, Josué. You wish you had a clone of yourself, someone out there. Well, that's the thing. You just trust the conductor to do that. Yeah. You trust that the conductor has those ears to make you guys sound good. And you just... That's something I will say for anyone going into music school. 100% trust your teachers. Like, you're going to find teachers eventually that you don't like and you disagree with on techniques and stuff. But when you first enter, you have to trust your teachers because there's going to be so much information that you do have to take in. And it's going to be way, way, way later, years down the road later. I don't even want to tell people this, that you'll find that there are certain things that teachers disagree on and they'll teach them differently and stuff. And you'll have to like pick and choose what direction you want to go more in and stuff. It's because music is an art. But Josué, you mentioned how the first time like playing as an ensemble, especially for us, it was kind of cool because we were all in the same like theory and ear training classes, right? And then the ensembles was like, all right, let's see what this cat can do or whatever. And funny enough, little backstory for you guys. Josué and I became friends, I think, after the first semester watching the jazz band. And we were both like, oh, I'm joining the jazz band next semester. And I was like, oh, what are you playing? He's like, drums. And he was like, what are you playing? I'm like, bass. And I
was like, we gotta be best friends.
It was set from that. Yeah. Like there was no way it wasn't happening, right?
Besties.
And then we never actually got to play drums and bass together in jazz because you played sax instead that first semester, and then I quit jazz eventually.
The first 2 semesters, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I think the closest we ever got was when you, me, and Brian were in that practice room, and we just cranked up all the levels on the amps, and then we were just jamming so loud, and it's like
we were playing Red Clay, and people came in, and they like opened the practice room. They're like, "Can you quiet down?"
No. We drew a crowd before that.
That's true.
And then we stopped, and then when we opened it, they were like, by the way, can you quiet it down? But that was cool.
The practice room was like, just like bouncing from like our grooves.
we were like funking up Red Clay too. It wasn't like the standard like ballady version.
That's what it was.
But you did mention that the first time that we're playing with each other, and this kind of ties in with what Jonathan was saying about the chair position. I fully believe this, that you never want to be the best musician in an ensemble. You want to be like the worst. You want everyone else to be better than you, even if it's scary. I mean, I remember like being a bass player in a jazz band, like you have so much pressure on you to name the chords, to keep the groove consistent and everything, right? And I remember sucking. But it's that pressure, right? And you have to have that pressure, and you'll learn so much just by having better musicians around you. And so ensembles are super, super important. And the you sucking thing, actually, I won't mention that yet. We'll move on to the next topic. Actually, that is the next topic. Segue. So segueing into the next thing is actually the overall mood / mentality of the schools, classmates, and professors. And obviously we're going to mention Whiplash at some point, because it's already been mentioned twice before. But so something that I would say right from the beginning and through is actually that everyone sucks in different ways. And you need to recognize when you go in that everyone sucks in different ways. I talk about this all the time. I remember the very first ear training class that we did, And somehow our ear training class had no vocalists in it. We were all instrumentalists, and it was like one by one. They were like, okay, sing your major scale. And all of us were like, do, re, mi. Like, just terrible. And I don't remember a single person laughing in that room of like 20-something people as people sang, even though people sounded terrible. And that moment, yeah. And that moment for me, dude, that moment was like, it's such a, like, a respectable, like, from that point on forward, I was like, oh crap. Like, we all just, not just wore our hearts on our sleeves, but like threw it at the wall for people to look at. And everyone respected each other. And it was like that moment forward that I was like, yeah, okay, we're like in this together, and we got to be like, you know, respectful of each other and kind to each other and stuff like that. And then eventually,
that's what it's about.
Eventually, once we became friends and stuff, and someone sucked at singing their scales in Ear Training 3, we would laugh at them. But, you know.
Yeah, someone like our friend Marmon Helton. Who is a phenomenal composer, by the way. Look him up if you haven't. But, yeah. No, you're right. That's what music school's about. It's about everyone sucking, pulling together, and then no one cares that this guy sucks. It's like, yeah, he sucks. So what? Let's help him. Because
Exactly.
we're tired of hearing it. It's not about, like, pushing you down. It's like, let's help you out because we're sick of hearing that.
Okay, but I do have to emphasize that the laughing thing was a joke after we all became friends and stuff. We didn't laugh at other people who like weren't in our little circle or whatever, right? And when they were terrible, because that's extremely disrespectful.
Of course.
Yeah.
We only laugh at people in our circle.
Right.
You know that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, never mind. I won't go off on like stories and stuff. But so there is that mentality of like, right, kind of from the beginning, everyone's in the same shoes, and everyone kind of has to learn to be super respectful of one another and just, you know, work it out together. So from you guys' perspective, is there anything about, actually, you know, I'll just go ahead on this. Something that I immediately picked up on first day of music school, Theory 1. I remember coming home and talking to someone, I don't remember who it was, and being like, wow, music school's like crazy awesome, and they're like exactly what I thought, and everyone's like, the teachers are super pretentious, and they know they're pretentious, and they show it off, and, you know, they show off their knowledge and this and that, and that was the vibe I got from day one. And that vibe stayed a little bit, and I think it was still there a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
Oh.
Without calling anyone out. Yeah.
No, yeah, you get there and all you've done is listen to pop music and screamo, and you know you like music, and you're plopped into a music lit class, and your teacher's like Notre Dame, and you're like, oh wow, I have to pronounce things and like pretend to be this, right?
It's true.
Yeah, and you get in trouble if you pronounce things inaccurately,
And,
right?
And then your professors, you find out that your professors pronounce things differently. And it's like, is it Berg or is it Berg? And then you're like, okay, you guys are all just pretentious for the sake of being pretentious, and we don't know who's actually right.
Exactly. And you know, it's another thing they don't tell you about music school is that immediately when you get there, people dress their identity, right? So you have people who wear creative jackets, right? Or you have women who might dress like the singer from Evanescence or something like that. You know, you have all these characters who, in the way they dress, have an identity.
The
right?
middle kid who sits in the back, or the kid who like brings a mug to class every day full of coffee, or a jar, a pickle juice jar with coffee. That's an identity, right?
Exactly. That is
Oh,
not.
yeah, that's funny.
And also, they don't tell you that certain people have different levels of hygiene, and musicians routinely neglect hygienic things. And bad breath, bad BO. Not uncommon on a music school campus.
Okay. First of all, I can't even laugh at that because I feel like I constantly have coffee breath like 24/7 because I drink so much coffee. But that's a real thing. PSA for anyone in choir: wear deodorant, please.
Yeah.
We
I'm gonna tell people the real deal, right? I'm not gonna sugarcoat this.
No, I'm glad you are. I mean, I'm glad you're not sugarcoating it.
Yeah.
No, that's yeah, and you're right. That pretentious like kind of attitude is there, but the thing is you can't let it affect you, really. And I will admit there was a point where it got to me. And this whole mentality of competition, right, that eventually starts coming up, like when you're transferring and you're performing, and it's like who's gonna be the bass player or whatever that gets the solo in jazz band or anything like that. This whole concept of competition mixed with the potentiality, is that a word, of
Sure.
of school as a whole can really affect you. And there was I mean, I'll just admit this was like the lowest moment in music school for me was semester 3, where I was so focused on transferring and I was getting like 5 hours of sleep a night, maybe 6, and I was on so much coffee and just not even eating that much and focused on transferring, and I was in 4 ensembles that semester, and I was overworked, and there's the competition of who's going to get into what schools and this and that, and it straight up affected me, and I became like a pretentious dick. And I mean, people called me out on it, and we won't go into that whole story. But eventually, like, I had to humble myself down again and remember, where we were at the beginning, and like, we're a team and this and that, and I feel terrible for how I acted at that time. But it can affect you, and it affects some people for sure. The competition mentality.
Absolutely.
Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, Josué's?
You're not the only one.
I mean, yeah. Was that at San Jack where you felt that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean at Nabi. Can I mention that place?
I don't know. Things have already gotten mentioned. It doesn't really matter too much.
Well, I mean.
By the way, what's Jonathan's address? Let me read that out. 1 North Street.
Oh my gosh.
What?
No,
I'm gonna get swatted.
So,
all right then.
Yeah, no, like, I think if I think like other like schools like UT or where do we go? Texas Tech. Like the competition's even higher there and stuff like that. And it's just like, imagine that.
that comes on stream, by the way, when you type something, just so you know.
Good.
Yeah. So you're talking about Texas State, I think. You guys
okay.
didn't go to Lubbock.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean the competition is higher, but so now that I've transferred to a university, while the competition's higher, I'm dealing with some of the friendliest and least pretentious professors I've ever dealt with in my life. So, I don't know if it needs to be there. Okay, Josué, what are your thoughts?
I don't know.
How did you feel about the overall music experience? Like your 4 semesters? Like, I remember you being pretty unhappy at times, and I remember you hating theory at times.
I don't know. Well, it's because I never intended to get a music degree. I just wanted to learn about music because I loved it, and I wanted to get better at being a musician in terms of like writing my own music. So I just kind of that's why like my sort of school academic path was so like unorthodox, because I just wanted to do my thing, and I appreciate all the faculty at the school, but they always wanted to sort of put their own agenda my way and said, hey, you should do this. You're good at this. Why don't you do this?
True.
And I was always conflicted, and I was never really sure what I wanted. And by that point, I was in school for a couple of years already, because I had switched majors, and it was just like a whole confusion a lot of the times. I feel like I might have been pretentious for a little while too, but then it's like, oh yeah, I suck. So that pretty much quickly.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I kind of like where I am now. I'm only in competition against myself.
Absolutely.
What was his prompt?
Same stuff, just general thoughts on music school.
Oh,
You have anything?
Pretentiousness? No.
So something that I wanna leave listeners with. There's a reason I left this as like one of the last topics, is that as I kind of said at the beginning, is that music school will change you, man. It's not like any other school. And the stuff that you go through, like the amount of pressure and work that's put on you, and again, like constantly wearing your heart on your sleeve, and people knowing how good you're doing, how bad you're doing, what you're up to, that kind of stuff, it'll completely change you. And I think it'll change you for the better. I was joking with my wife the other day, though, who's also a music major, though, about how, like, you spend so much time in music school actually just like practicing and working on stuff and being in the building, right? That I know now that I'm in my 4th year of that, including like summers and winters of taking courses, that I actually kind of have a hard time having normal conversations with anyone that like isn't a music major. And it's not like I'm not like awkward, I don't think, but in the sense that I talk in a way that I forget that people don't know, haven't been through everything that we've been through, and aren't the same type of people that we are, because we're all, I think once you go through the process, you're all kind of formulated as this type of person. And like even just knowledge, right? You could talk about on a basic knowledge thing, like talking about a chord, and some musicians don't actually know what defines something as a chord, right? And you're like, oh, I'm talking about the German augmented 6 chord, which has a sharp 4 and a minor 3 and a flat 6, ho ho ho, and people are like, what are you even saying? But just the we're awkward sometimes. It's okay, says my wife in chat. That's true. But it's just a shift of personality completely. We're just more. I think we're more open people. And I talked to I won't say the name, but I talked to a very prestigious ensemble director at the University of North Texas one time, and I talked to him for about an hour. And I was just talking to him about like transfer process and this and that, and something that he said, and he's like teaching at a prestigious school, went to like Eastman and stuff, and all, like, very high level guy. He said that as musicians, specifically these music majors, we have higher highs than other people do in life. And it's like we see more vibrant colors. He didn't say that, I'm saying that. But he said we have higher highs than other people do, but we also have lower lows. And I think that's kind of the most accurate description of what going through music school is like. Because you can be so insanely self-destructive at times with the overwhelming stress and the work and the competition and the pressure. But then at the same time, you're doing things that other people will never do in their entire life. Like, I remember after I sang for the first time solo on a stage in front of people in lab, I was like, oh my gosh, I just sang solo in front of like 30 people for them to judge me on a stage. Like, that's crazy. Like, your average person doesn't have an experience like that, right? It's kind of, it's kind of like adrenaline junkies and stuff, how they, they'll jump across buildings and stuff. Your average person has no experience like that, right? And to me, that's like a high, right? Getting that done. Or, for example, I had one of my compositions selected for the Society of Composers, and it was performed, 2 of them were performed for a group of all like professor composers. And I was like, what on earth? How is life even realistic right now? Like, that was such a high magical moment for me. And at the same time, there's the low lows I was talking about, where there was like a whole semester of me just being physically abusive to myself with dietary stuff, and being abusive to other people as well, like emotionally. But all of that to say, the whole process, it's something, and it'll change you, and you kind of have to fully embrace it. And in order to do music, I'm gonna name drop here, Zach Mayfield of O Sleeper. He actually, I think he did go to school for music for like a semester or something, but he said that doing music and doing the O Sleeper thing and touring all around the world and stuff, he said that he lost tons of friends and tons of connections, and there's people in his life that are basically completely gone now because he had to make a choice to, practice. He had to make a choice to do the gig. He had to make a choice to leave and this and that. There's no more, just hanging out with friends. I hang out with friends very, very, very occasionally. You don't really get to do that stuff anymore when you're fully committed. And Brain, I love you right now.
I'm stretching. Every moment, bro,
Yeah.
is a moment to get better at your craft.
That's true.
I'm thinking about what's the major third of a D sharp chord.
F
right?
double sharp.
Exactly. Yeah, like, bro. Yeah, I'm with you though. I'm still with you.
But yeah, so music school it's something unlike any other, and really you kind of have to. You can't. I've heard it said that if you can see yourself doing anything other than music, don't go to music school. Music school is for people that it's the only option. And I think not because they're terrible at everything else.
Yeah.
No, actually, I was terrible at music and good at other things, and still decided to do it. And so that, I don't know what that says, but I think I'm still not very good at it. But yeah, it's a full commitment, and it's like a life-changing thing, and it's not like anything else for sure. It's a totally different world.
Yeah.
Any other final comments on that?
Actually, yeah. I'm just going to pose a question. How often are you interrupting movies with your girlfriend because you heard something in the score?
That's really funny. Actually, that just happened like yesterday or something. Not a movie. We were watching Scrubs, and I was like, wait, go back 30 seconds. I got to Shazam that. And then I found out it was actually part of Scrubs' written score, and it was like super pretty, and I was like, whoa, that was unexpected. Like, Shazam didn't pick it up, so I assume it was part of like Scrubs' written score. But all the time, having a music major wife, we're always hearing the same stuff, and we're like being nerds together about it.
Good. Yeah, I actually found that. I'm with the vocalist right now, and it's very hard for me to be with the woman who isn't a musician because she just doesn't understand that and doesn't understand the hours.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So actually, the final thing I wanted to talk about, which I probably should have talked about before I did that whole speech I just did, but the last thing we're going to talk about is degree plans. So when you go to music school, you're gonna have to pick a degree, and there's like safe degrees and there's not safe degrees. So generally at most schools you have, is it 4 different options, right? So you've got music education as your bachelor's option, music theory, music composition, music performance, and then we'll go ahead and add jazz studies as a 5th one at some schools. Most schools don't actually have jazz programs. And so all of those things, all of those degrees provide different jobs and are actually, they split pretty hard after like, well, kind of at the 4th year going into grad school is when they really split hard. But so a performance degree, for those that don't know, is actually a degree that focuses solely on your single instrument, and you say you have a performance degree in guitar or voice or whatever, and the whole purpose of that degree is to make you the best possible performer that there is. And then you have your education degree, which provides an education certificate so that you can teach K through 12. And focuses less on performance. Generally, education majors are seen as slightly worse performers, and they're expected to do a little less performance-wise because they're going to be educators. And they do a lot of different stuff, such as like learning the basics of like every instrument in existence. So they can, you know, even if they're a sax player, they can pick up a big band and then teach every instrument to some extent, right? And then you've got theory majors, which are the weird people. Theory majors focus almost solely on theory, and they write a lot of like analyses on pieces of music and stuff like that. A theory major as a whole doesn't really get you a job of any kind until you go through master's and really doctorate. And the purpose of a theory major is to write theories on music, but the real job is actually just teaching college theory. And that's a little weird. Speaking of which, the performance degree, performers generally also have to get a master's degree in performance. And a degree in performance doesn't actually mean anything. It means basically nothing because you're audition based. It means that you spent time practicing, but so could someone else who only has a bachelor's or an associate's or whatever. But you essentially need a master's in performance if you're going to get a job of any kind. Baby took a snapshot. So there's that, and then composition, which is what I am. A composition degree, you have to have a primary instrument just like every other degree, and you often are expected to be you're expected to be pretty much as good as an education major on your instrument, but primarily focusing on writing music, and it's writing a lot of time writing classical music, and a lot of what that entails is actually score writing. So if you don't know how to read music, oh boy, you're gonna learn. Because it's not working in a DAW, unless you're at a more poppy school. And then jazz studies, it's just a general jazz degree, which I don't think does a whole lot for you either in your bachelor's. And so these degree plans, generally a lot of music majors will be told to go the music education route, because it's the only route that has a safe job lock-in, because you can find a job teaching K through 12. And then the other ones you kind of need a master's or a doctorate in. And it's kind of up to you, obviously, when you go through music school, if you decide you're going to do it. My mentality is if I'm fully committing on music, I'm not trying to get a safe job anyway. Do you guys have anything, experience, perspectives on degree plans? Brain, you're an ed major, so what's your experience as an ed major?
What to expect is tons of method classes, like you said, right?
Hey, no riff swaggling.
Riffs all over, right?
He did it.
But
Guys,
yeah,
I know-
generally it is the safe major, and composition and performance are much less safe, right? And are much more risky. And that's just about it. Yeah, I personally would only go to music school to do education. Maybe composition, because then you have the ability to be around players all the time, with people who you can bounce ideas off of, ensembles at your disposal, and they're paying to be there. I mean, what's better than that?
So that actually raises the point that I meant to bring up a long time ago, which I think will be the final point, is that what is the purpose of going to music school? So you can figure out all your degree plans and stuff later and figure out what's right for you. But what is the purpose of going to music school? Well, it makes you a better musician, but you don't need it to become a better musician, period. Music school is not a requirement. In general, I would say college is not a huge requirement these days, just because all information is online. But music especially, you do not need it to be a good performer, a good composer, or anything like that. You could read all of the textbooks and stuff yourself and learn this information. But what it does is the most invaluable thing, and is actually how this podcast came together, is it puts you in the scene.
Amen.
The music world is incredibly small. It's unreal how small the even educated music world and the non-educated music world is, and how they are connected. And the biggest thing is having connections and peers to play with, to write for, to study with, whatever. Whatever. And generally, I think these people are going to be the people you're referencing as your musicians for the rest of your lives. I mean, I know, like Josué, for example, if I ever needed a drummer, I would call Josué first. Every time. Even though I'm at a university now and there's plenty of other drummers, right? But it's 100% the connections. The arts are about marketing yourself, and advertising yourself and making yourself, just an option. Because if you're not out there, you're not an option. People don't know you as an option. And so
True.
That's 100% the biggest thing. I'll reference Adam Neely. Adam Neely said in one of his videos that when he went to get his master's at Berklee, not Berklee College of Music, but is it Boston something Conservatory? I don't remember. But anyway, he said that his master's degree didn't actually do anything for him career-wise, because having a master's in music doesn't really mean a whole ton. But it was the connections that he made there that now he's a gigging musician and a working musician in New York and plays all over the world and does that kind of stuff. And it's the connections. And that really, really is the biggest thing that I've taken away from music school, is being in the world. Just, I know people constantly now who are like asking me to compose for them, and people who like I want to play with and all this stuff, and we can just always reference each other. And so it's the connections that's the most important part of music school, I'd say. Oh, I met my wife in music school, if that helps. That's a connection.
You two are very connected.
Quite literally. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Yeah, we'll do social media plugs. That'll be the last thing we do. Don't you worry.
Oh man.
That's why.
He has a
Another thing-
PRS. Show us that.
Look at this, man.
He does have a PRS. Okay, some people are listening to audio on this, so they don't see that. So,
Like, I feel like one of the other things that you really take away from music school is like knowing how to practice and how to be a disciplined musician. That, like, I feel like I definitely didn't have before going to school. Like, all those private lessons, all those ensembles, those classes hold you accountable. And I can speak for myself. I wouldn't have done as or furthered as much as a musician if I hadn't gone to music school. Like really, all that stuff they teach you, right there.
I'm listening, Josué.
I'm not anymore.
Yeah, I think if I didn't go to music school, I wouldn't be here. So I'm so
You
glad.
definitely wouldn't. We wouldn't know a math major.
Nope.
Yeah, man, I love school.
All right. So that will basically conclude the first episode of the Music Mentality Podcast. Thanks for popping in. Next episode, we're going to talk about, we're going to get more into meat and potatoes and talk about theoretical things or something interesting. I have not settled on what that topic's going to be yet. It might be something as simple as the number system, or it might be something as complex as polychordal harmony mixed with quintal harmony in the 20th century or something.
Nope.
He said no, so we're not doing that.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, let us know in the comments what you want to do. Actually, generally, if we get enough viewers, this section will be a Q&A right before we do our plug. You can ask any questions you want. But right now, I don't think we have enough viewers. I think it's literally just my wife and like 2 other people. Jonathan, are you going to ask a question right now?
Oh, no.
So with all of this being said, Brain, would you like to plug yourself on social media so people can check you out, tell what you do, what you got going on?
Absolutely. Yeah, follow me. I am Brian Wondra. Find me on Facebook, YouTube, you name it. Come see me live. Jazz all day. Jonathan. Skip Jonathan. Jacob.
No, it's Jonathan. We're going in order. Jonathan, do you have any social media worth plugging?
I guess you can follow me on Instagram. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Josué, what do you got?
Y'all can follow me on Instagram at jmancias_. I post a lot of stuff there. I put a lot of stuff on Facebook now too, just because everyone on Instagram is pretty much like musicians that already know me. But people on Facebook are like, it's like another different market that, that are not musicians. So I'm posting a lot there too, just to kind of like throw it in that way too, just because I have some plans for the future. And yeah, you should be a part of that. Check it out.
For sure. Brain, you gotta stop playing, man.
Perfect.
There you go. Did he just put his Instagram? Nice.
Yeah.
So you can find me on YouTube. The general tag that I'm going by these days is just JL Clodfelter, with no dots or anything. You can find that on Instagram. I think actually it's Jacob Clodfelter on YouTube. Last name is Clodfelter. And you'll find compositions and stuff that I'm doing there. Yeah, I don't post a whole lot of me performing, but it's mostly composition stuff if you wanted to follow me there. And yeah. Bye, guys.
I love you.
So.
Yeah.